froze when the front door opened. My husband walked in, his arm wrapped around a pregnant woman. He looked at me without a trace of guilt. "Emily," he said calmly, "Jessica is moving in with us." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I looked at her swollen belly, then at the man I'd loved for 12 years. I waited for an explanation, an apology, anything. Instead, he sighed. "Please don't make this difficult." A bitter smile crossed my face. "So, you're bringing your pregnant mistress into our home?" He nodded. "The baby is mine. I have responsibilities." Responsibilities. The word almost made me laugh. What about the promises he made to me? The vows he spoke on our wedding day? Jessica finally looked up. I'm sorry." I shook my head. "You don't owe me an apology. The man who promised to love me forever." I looked straight at Daniel. "Is the one who does." Silence filled the room. Daniel looked annoyed instead of ashamed. "Can we act like adults?" I stared at him for a second. Then I simply turned toward the kitchen. "I'm making dinner." Both of them looked surprised. "You still have to eat." "So do I." We ate in complete silence. Daniel kept serving Jessica. The way he looked at her used to be the way he looked at me. It hurt more than I could ever describe. When dinner was over, they went upstairs together. I stayed alone in the living room. I looked at our wedding photo hanging on the wall. Slowly, I took it down, laid it face down on the table. Then I walked into my home office. I opened my laptop, logged into an account Daniel didn't even know existed. A few seconds later, the company dashboard appeared. At the top of the screen, my name stood out. Emily Carter, majority shareholder, inampuro 5%. I stared at it for a long moment. Then, I smiled, not because I had forgiven him, but because I finally knew exactly what I was going to do next. I couldn't stay in that house. Every wall, every room reminded me of what I had just lost. I grabbed my keys and drove away without knowing where I was going. A light rain had started to fall. The city was still alive. People were laughing. Couples were holding hands. Life seemed so normal, while mine had just fallen apart. A small bar caught my attention. I parked across the street, walked inside. The music was soft. The lights were dim. I chose the darkest corner I could find, far away from everyone else. I ordered a whiskey. Then another. I stared at the glass in front of me. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. For 12 years, I had loved one man. I built my entire life around him. And tonight, he brought another woman into our home. Pregnant with his child, I kept asking myself the same question. Was I really that easy to replace? A tear rolled down my cheek. Then another. Soon, I couldn't stop crying. I covered my face with both hands, trying not to make a sound, trying not to let anyone see me falling apart. The bartender quietly walked over. He placed a napkin beside my glass. "You okay?" I forced a smile. "I will be, just not tonight." He nodded, didn't ask another question. Sometimes, silence is kinder than sympathy. My phone suddenly buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Don't come home too late. Jessica needs your bathroom tomorrow morning." I stared at the screen. My tears stopped. Something inside me changed. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't worried about me. The only thing on his mind was making sure his mistress was comfortable. I slowly wiped away the last tear,
Took one final sip of whiskey.
then stood up. I looked at my reflection in the bar's window. The woman staring back at me looked broken. But behind those red, swollen eyes, something new had appeared. Strength. I whispered to myself, no more crying. If he wants to destroy my life, he'll learn exactly what it costs. I walked back to my car, opened my laptop, plugged it into the company system. The screen lit up. Emily Carter, majority shareholder, inampuro 5%. I took a deep breath, then clicked one button. Emergency board meeting. Tomorrow, my tears would end. This nightmare would begin. The next morning, Daniel woke up smiling, as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't destroyed 12 years of marriage in a single night. He walked downstairs, adjusting his tie. Jessica was already sitting at the kitchen table. Where's Emily? He asked. I don't know, Jessica replied quietly. I didn't hear her come home. Daniel shrugged. She'll get over it. Just then, his phone vibrated. Emergency board meeting. Alas 9 ng umaga. Attendance required. By Emily Carter. Daniel smirked. So that's her plan? Jessica looked at him. What do you mean? She's trying to scare me. He laughed. She'll calm down eventually. 9 o'clock. The boardroom was already full. Every board member was there. The company's lawyer, the CFO, senior executives. Daniel walked in with the confidence of a man who believed he owned everything. Good morning, everyone. No one answered. The room felt different. Then the door opened. Emily walked in. She wasn't wearing yesterday's tears. She wore a cream-colored suit. Her hair was tied back neatly. Her expression was calm, cold, confident. She walked past Daniel without even looking at him. For the first time, he felt something he hadn't expected. Eunice. Emily placed a folder in front of every board member. Then she finally looked at Daniel. Good morning. He forced a smile. So, is this your little revenge? Emily ignored the question. Please open the first page. Everyone did. Daniel glanced down, then froze. At the top of the page were 4 words. Company ownership structure. Below them, one name stood out. Emily Carter, 65%. His own name appeared underneath. Daniel Carter, 15%. His smile disappeared. What is this? Emily folded her hands. The truth. Daniel laughed. This has to be fake. It isn't, the company lawyer said calmly. I personally verified every document. Daniel turned toward him. What are you talking about?
The lawyer slid a thick file across the table.
These are the original incorporation documents. Every signature, every share transfer, every legal record. Daniel flipped through the pages. His hands began to shake. Every signature was his. Every document was real. He looked up at Emily. You knew all this time? Emily met his eyes. I didn't hide it. You just never cared enough to ask. Silence filled the room. For the first time in years, Daniel realized something terrifying. He had never truly known the woman he married. Emily slowly stood up. Her voice was calm. But this meeting isn't about ownership. She paused. It's about leadership. She looked around the room, then said the words that changed everything. I'd like to call for a vote to remove Daniel Carter as CEO. The room fell silent.
Daniel felt the ground disappear beneath his feet.
No one spoke. The room was completely silent. Daniel looked around the table, waiting for someone, anyone, to laugh and say this was all a joke. No one did. He slammed both hands on the table. This is ridiculous. I'm the CEO. I built this company. Emily remained calm. You helped build it, but you don't own it. Daniel pointed at the board members. Say something. You all know this company wouldn't exist without me. The CFO lowered his eyes. So would Emily. The words hit harder than Daniel expected. Emily slowly picked up a small remote. A large screen behind her lit up. One by one, photos appeared. Business meetings, investor conferences, late-at-night strategy sessions. Emily was in every picture, sometimes standing in the background, sometimes leading the meeting, sometimes signing contracts. Daniel stared at the screen. He barely remembered half of those moments. Emily looked at everyone in the room. For years, I chose to stay behind the scenes. I wanted my husband to shine. I thought his success was our success. She paused. I was wrong. The room fell silent again. Then Emily looked directly at the board. I'd like to begin the vote. One by one, hands slowly went up. The first, the second, the third. Daniel's breathing became heavier. No, this can't be happening. More hands rose. Even people he had worked with for years voted against him. Finally, the last board member raised his hand. The vote was unanimous. The company lawyer stood up. As of this moment, Daniel Carter is officially removed as Chief Executive Officer. Daniel's face turned pale. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. He looked at Emily. You planned all of this. Emily shook her head. No, I prepared for this. There's a difference. Daniel took a step toward her. So what now? You've taken my company. You've embarrassed me. Is that enough? Emily held his gaze. I'm not taking your company. I'm protecting mine. Daniel stood speechless. For the first time, he realized he had already lost. Not just the company, not just his title. He had lost the only person who had always stood beside him. Emily picked up her bag. Before walking out, she stopped at the door. Without turning around, she said quietly, "Oh, one more thing. I've already filed for divorce." Daniel's eyes widened. The door closed behind her. He stood alone in the silent boardroom. Everything he thought he owned was gone. Daniel sat in complete silence. His hands were still shaking. Then the TV turned on. Jessica grabbed the remote. Daniel, they're talking about you. Breaking news flashed across the screen. CEO Daniel Carter removed by majority shareholder Emily Carter.
A reporter stood outside the company's headquarters.
Sources confirmed that Emily Carter owns 65% of the company and has officially taken over as CEO. Jessica stared at the TV. Her face slowly turned pale. She looked at Daniel. You told me this company was yours. Daniel couldn't answer. You said Emily was just a housewife. Still, silence. Jessica's voice grew louder. So you lied to me? Daniel slammed his fist on the table. I didn't lie. He stopped. Because he realized he had never actually known the truth. Jessica laughed. A cold, disappointed laugh. You don't even own the company? Daniel looked away. No. She took a step back. What about this house? It's Emily's. The cars? Hers. The vacation home? Hers. Jessica couldn't believe what she was hearing. So what exactly is yours? Daniel had no answer. The room fell silent. Jessica suddenly exploded. I gave up everything for you. I destroyed another woman's marriage because I believed you had a future. And now you're telling me you have nothing? Daniel shouted back. Enough! I'm dealing with enough already. Jessica pointed toward the television. No, you're finally dealing with the truth. She grabbed her suitcase from upstairs, started throwing clothes inside. Daniel stared at her. What are you doing? She zipped the suitcase shut. I'm leaving. His eyes widened. You said you loved me. Jessica laughed again. If you could betray your wife, what makes you think you were special to me? Those words hit Daniel harder than losing his company. At that exact moment, the front door opened. Emily walked inside. She calmly placed 2 envelopes on the table. One in front of Daniel, the other beside Jessica. Jessica opened hers. You have 24 hours to leave my house. She looked around the mansion one last time, then at Emily. For the first time, she realized neither of them had truly won. One had lost her marriage. The other had built her happiness on a lie. Only Emily had found the strength to walk away. Jessica dragged her suitcase to the front door. Daniel stepped in front of her. So that's it? You're just leaving? Jessica crossed her arms. What did you expect? That I'd stay here and watch your life fall apart? Daniel clenched his fists. I lost everything today. Jessica looked him straight in the eye. No, you lost everything long before today. You just didn't realize it. She pushed past him without looking back.
The front door slammed shut.
The sound echoed through the empty house. For the first time, Daniel was truly alone. A slow clap broke the silence. Daniel turned around. Emily was standing in the hallway. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't angry. She simply looked disappointed. I guess she wasn't in love with you after all. Daniel lowered his head. Emily, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. She interrupted him. You're right. You don't. Her voice was calm. Too calm. I spent 12 years believing we were building a future together. But while I was building a life, you were building excuses. Daniel took a hesitant step toward her. I made a terrible mistake. Emily nodded. You did. But your biggest mistake wasn't cheating. He frowned. It was believing, but never walk away. Those words left Daniel speechless. Emily walked to the fireplace. She picked up their wedding photo, the same photo she had turned face down the night before. She looked at it one last time, then removed the picture from the frame. Without a word, she tore it in half. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Please, don't do this. Emily looked at him. I didn't destroy this marriage. You did. She dropped the torn photo into the fireplace. The flames slowly consumed the last memory of their life together. Daniel watched in silence. He wanted to stop her, but he knew he had already lost that right. Emily placed the folder on the table. By tomorrow morning, you'll be out of this house. My lawyer will handle the rest. Daniel stared at the folder, then looked up. Where am I supposed to go? Emily answered without hesitation. The same place you expected me to go. When you brought another woman into my home. Daniel felt like the air had been ripped from his lungs. He remembered his own words. Don't make this difficult. She'll be living here from now on. Now, those words came back to haunt him. Emily picked up her keys. Before walking out, she stopped beside him. Without anger, without hatred, she quietly said, I hope one day you become the man I thought I married. She walked away. The front door closed. Daniel collapsed onto the couch. The mansion was silent, cold, empty. For the first time in 12 years, there was no one left waiting for him. And he finally understood. Losing a company hurts. Losing money hurts. But losing the only person who truly loved you is a pain that never leaves. The next morning, Daniel woke up on the living room couch. For a few seconds, he forgot everything. Then he looked around. The empty house reminded him. It wasn't a nightmare. It was real. His phone buzzed. A notification from the bank. Several corporate accounts had been removed from his access. Another email arrived. Company vehicle returned. Then another. Captive insurance terminated. One by one, everything connected to his old life disappeared. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. Karma works fast. A week later, he rented a tiny apartment across town. The walls were bare. The furniture was secondhand. At night, the silence was unbearable. He reached for his phone more than once. He wanted to call Emily, to apologize, to beg. Every time he stopped, what could he possibly say? I'm sorry? Those words felt meaningless now. Meanwhile, Emily's first day as CEO made headlines. Every business channel covered the story. One reporter asked her, Mistress Carter, many people believe this was personal revenge. Emily smiled politely. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability. If someone betrays your trust at home, they'll eventually betray it at work. The interview went viral. Millions watched it, including Daniel. He replayed those words again and again, not because they hurt, because they were true. That evening, Daniel sat alone with an old photo album. Page after page, he saw the life they had built together. Their first apartment, their honeymoon, the day they opened their first office. Then, a small envelope slipped onto the floor. He picked it up. Inside was a handwritten letter, Emily's handwriting. He frowned. He didn't remember ever reading it. The date caught his attention. It was written 10 years ago. He slowly unfolded the paper. The first line read, If you're reading this, it means I never found the courage to give it to you. Daniel's heart began to race. He sat down and started reading. 3 months later, Emily stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows in her office. The city stretched beneath her, the same city that had once witnessed the worst night of her life. Now, he was watching her rise. Life slowly found its rhythm again. She finalized the divorce without a single argument. She sold the mansion, not because she needed the money, but because every corner of that house carried memories she no longer wanted to keep. She bought a smaller penthouse overlooking the river. It was quiet, peaceful. For the first time in years, it truly felt like home. Running the company alone wasn't easy. Many investors doubted her. Some believed the business would collapse without Daniel. Emily never argued. She let the results speak for her. Month after month, the company continued to grow. New clients arrived. Profits exceeded expectations. Employee satisfaction reached an all-time high. She introduced paid parental leave, mental health support, flexible working hours, scholarships for employees' children. People no longer stayed because they had to.
They stayed because they wanted to.
Within a year, the company became one of the fastest growing businesses in the state. Business magazines called Emily the woman who rebuilt more than a company. But what she rebuilt was herself. Friends often tried to set her up on dates. She always smiled politely, then declined. It wasn't because she still loved Daniel, and it wasn't because she hated men. She had simply learned something priceless. Happiness doesn't begin with finding the right person. It begins with becoming the right person for yourself. She no longer searched for someone to complete her. She already felt complete. Sometimes, she spent Friday evenings reading a book by the window. Sometimes she traveled alone. Sometimes she simply enjoyed the silence. A silence that no longer felt lonely. It felt peaceful. Emily had finally discovered something she had never experienced during 12 years of marriage. Freedom. 1 year later, the New York sky was unusually clear. Emily stood in front of the 50-story glass headquarters of Carter Group. The company's logo had changed. She never changed the company's name. She changed the way the company treated people. Over the past year, revenue had nearly doubled. Employees no longer worked until midnight. New mothers received fully paid maternity leave. Scholarship programs were created for employees' children. People no longer called Emily the former CEO's wife. Now, they called her a leader who truly earned their respect. Across the city, Daniel walked out of a small rented apartment. The luxury cars were gone. The private driver was gone. The custom-tailored suits were gone. After the scandal, no major company was willing to hire him. The reputation he had spent years building was gone. He walked to a small neighborhood cafe. It was his new job, making coffee, cleaning tables, serving customers, things he had never imagined doing. That afternoon, the cafe door opened. The little bell above it rang softly. Daniel looked up. For a moment, time stood still. Emily walked in. She wore a simple beige coat. The pain that once filled her eyes had disappeared. Only peace remained. They looked at each other for a few seconds. Emily smiled politely. "Hello, Daniel." He smiled back, but there was sadness behind his eyes. "It's been a long time." Emily nodded. "One Americano, please." Daniel quietly prepared the coffee himself. The same hands that once signed multi-million-dollar contracts now carefully placed a cup on the counter. Emily reached into her purse. Daniel gently shook his head. "This one's on me." Emily looked at him, then softly placed the money on the counter. "No, we don't owe each other anything anymore." Her words were gentle, almost like a whisper, but they pierced Daniel's heart. Emily picked up her coffee. Just before she walked away, she turned back. "Thank you." Daniel looked confused. "Thank me? For what?" Emily glanced at the bright street outside. "For teaching me the most important lesson of my life. Never lose your own worth just to keep someone who no longer chooses you." With that, she walked away. Daniel stood silently behind the cafe window. He watched her disappear into the crowd. This time, he didn't chase after her because he finally understood. Some people don't leave because they stop loving you. They leave because they finally learned to love themselves. Daniel reached into his pocket. The old wedding ring was still there. He looked at it and smiled sadly. "If I had another chance, I would choose you all over again. But life doesn't have a rewind button."